When your power eclipses mine, I will become expendable. This is the rule of 2. 1 master and 1 apprentice. When you are ready to claim the mantle of Dark Lord as your own, you must do so by eliminating me.
Welcome to Nerd Rage, Club 40 Audio's podcast designed to inflict fury on the nerdiest of listeners. I'm your host, Wesley Critchfield. Today we're discussing my theory which may completely change the way you think about Star Wars. Okay, so in the latest trailer for Episode 8, The Last Jedi, we heard Luke say this.
I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end.
This set the interwebs ablazing. What does he mean? How can the Jedi end and continue the series? No way is Disney going to make a permanent end to Star Wars when they just got hold of the franchise. Is Luke turning to the dark side? What's going on? Well, fear not, gentle nerds. But when I heard this, it only confirmed one of my longest held theories. And while at this moment Episode 8 has yet to be released, I believe I have come up with a theory that solves all of this and puts a new spin on the prequels. Yes, those horrible, horrible prequels which we all wanted so badly and now only wish we could forget. It turns out they play an integral role in the whole franchise, plot holes and all, and they will be resolved in one simple theory. But before we get to all of that, we have a little matter of canon to discuss.
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
Not that canon! Okay, so with the reboot of the Star Wars universe, a lot of things that happened in the books, especially post-Return of the Jedi, got tossed into the blender and are no longer considered part of the history of the franchise. Most of these books are now considered to be under the category of Star Wars Legend. However, most of what happened before The Phantom Menace and between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope seems to be pretty intact. Except for, of course, the Dark Forces video game, which was now completely obliterated by Rogue One. Rest in peace, Kyle Katarn. We hardly knew ye. I say all that to say this.
I don't care about the books.
I don't care about Star Wars Rebels. I don't care about the Clone Wars. I don't care about the video games. I don't care about anything that doesn't happen, or at least have itself deeply rooted in the 7 episodes we've seen thus far, and the single Star Wars story we got with Rogue One. Everything that was released theatrically and was not a straight-up cartoon, that's what we're talking about, okay? So forget everything else, because we're just focusing on the movies.
Yes. I can feel the hatred growing inside of you. Feed me your rage, and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Sorry, was that out loud? So, yeah, for the purposes of this theory, I'm going to cut out everything that isn't in the movies with one major exception. But it kinda is there too. But we'll get to that. So, solely based on the movies, here's the theory. The Sith have stacked the deck of the universe against the Jedi, making it impossible for them to win. That's right. The never-ending battle against good and evil will never be winnable by either side. So the only way the Jedi can win is not to play the game. Or in this case, not exist. The Sith have wargamed the entire universe. Matthew Broderick would be so proud.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The Sith have enacted something in the Star Wars universe that is called the Rule of Two. Now, as far as I know, the Rule of Two is never quite called out in the movies, but there is a subtle mention of it a few times in those nasty prequels.
Always 2 there are. No more, no less. A master and an apprentice.
This is the first inkling we get of the Rule of Two. Now, I said I wasn't going to go back into the books, the video games, or the TV shows. But the creation of the Rule of Two goes back to a character known as Darth Bane. Yes, that's right. The Sith who broke the bat. Wait. No, that's a different theory altogether. Never mind. Darth Bane was a Sith Lord back in the day, and there's a whole trilogy of books about this bit of Star Wars lore, and I have not read it. That's right, I'm keeping my promise as best I can, but to understand the theory, the Rule of Two is crucial. And as part of my goal to inflict nerd rage on all you happy geeks out there, I am completely foregoing any research and just continuing with my theory based solely on the movies. Now, as I understand, there used to be hundreds of Sith spread across the galaxy, just like we see with the Jedi in episodes 1 through 3. But then there was some sort of extinction level event in which all the Sith were wiped out. I'm not sure if it was a civil war, or if Darth Bane decided to execute Order 66 on his own people, or what. It's irrelevant. But in the end, it comes down to Darth Bane and his apprentice, and he decrees that from now on there will only be 2 Sith at any given moment, the Master and the Apprentice. And it's the apprentice's job to learn the ways of the Master and eventually become greater than his Master, which if all goes well, ends in murder or suicide. Then the apprentice becomes greater than his master and finds his own apprentice, and the cycle starts anew. We see this rule played out through the prequels. First, Senator Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, has Darth Maul. But then he gets sliced and diced at the end of Phantom Menace and is never seen again. And yes, I know he came back in the cartoon shows, but for one, I call bull cookies on that. But secondly, I've already said we're not counting the TV shows. 3 times now! Jeez, will you get over it?
Ah, yes, I can feel your anger.
Okay, so if somehow Darth Maul is still alive somewhere in the movie universe at the end of The Phantom Menace, he has now failed and is no longer Darth Sidious's apprentice. The Sith title has been stripped away, or he's dead. One way or another, he's no longer one of the 2.
But old Papi, he has muy apprentices waiting in the wings, and Misa is the darkest lord of all. You shall be striking me down, gonna be making Misa more powerful than ever.
So in episode 2, we find out that Darth Sidious has taken on a new apprentice, which is of course Count Dooku. But he dies at the beginning of episode 3 as Anakin continues his journey toward the dark side, only to eventually become Darth Vader. Sidious himself tells us about the rule of 2 when Anakin and him are sitting in the weird fish opera.
Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep.
Anakin finally becomes Darth Vader, and the rule of 2 is fulfilled once more. Following me so far? Good, because here's where the poodoo gets deep. It was predicted long ago that when the Chosen One came, he would bring balance to the Force.
With all due respect, Master, is he not the Chosen One? Is he not to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force?
So the prophecy says.
A prophecy that misread could have been.
Balance is a ticklish business. The Jedi follow what we here in the planetary system Sol would consider a very Eastern philosophy. In those philosophies is the concept of yin and yang. Now, I won't pretend that I'm an expert on these things, but I do know that in the Eastern religions they speak of the balance of good and evil, right and wrong.
The dark side. And the light.
These 2 forces are always at battle in the world, and they balance each other out. And one is never more powerful than the other. At least, not for very long. But in America and the Western way of thinking, we think of the balance in a very different way. We think of balance being struck when the powers of good are in control and abundant, and the powers of darkness are minimal, small, and contained. But the Force in Star Wars is always looking for balance. It follows that Eastern philosophy. When one power becomes stronger than the other, the Force will take action to bring those 2 powers into balance.
Yes, I can feel the idea growing inside your brain. You may not even realize it's there yet, but soon, very soon, it will consume you, and you will not be able to resist my logic.
So, by creating and enforcing the rule of 2, the Sith have made it virtually impossible for the Jedi to win, and have actually set the groundwork for the near annihilation of the Jedi by Order 66. Why was it so easy for the Jedi to be wiped out in a single day? Well, there are historical analogs, not the least of which being the Knights Templar, which were all declared enemies of the Church and mostly wiped out and arrested by the Pope on a single day, which was Friday the 13th, 1307. But no, the reason that it was so easy for the Sith was that the Sith had an ally in the Force, which, after thousands of years, was finally bringing itself back into balance by bringing the Jedi into balance with the Sith, by willowing them down to 2, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hey, what about Samuel L. Jackson, Mace Windu, the bad brother himself? He didn't die at the end of that situation.
Okay, slow your roll, incredibly racist voice. First of all, that's a theory in and of itself. So far as we know, Mace Windu is dead when Anakin chopped off his hands and Sidious pushed him out of the window. But if Mace Windu is still alive out there somewhere, that doesn't preclude this theory, because Mace was the only wielder of a purple lightsaber, and for those who don't know, that means he was actually able to use both sides of the Force, the dark and the light. That's right, Mace Windu is Star Wars' version of Doctor Strange's Ancient One.
Spoilers.
So, being able to use both sides would continue to balance the Force, but let's face it, he's most likely dead.
Cut, Trent, check the gate, moving on.
At the end of Revenge of the Sith, only 2 Jedi are known to be alive, Ben and Yoda. Both of them go into exile. Ben on Tatooine to be near to Luke and learn the ways of the afterlife ghost force things from Qui-Gon Jinn, and quite possibly make out with some moisture farmer's daughter to create Rey, but that's another theory. And of course Yoda to mostly sit around in a swamp all day.
Think that is what you do, yes? Yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes.
So for nearly 20 years, they are the only 2 Jedi in the galaxy. Then Ben takes on Luke as his apprentice. And while Luke is not yet a Jedi, the Force is strong with him, and this is part of what makes it so easy for Darth to take out Ben in their final battle. Ben is already ready to be translated into pure energy by the Force. And so Luke goes on to complete his training with Master Yoda. At the end of Jedi, Yoda has joined Ben in the Force, and this leaves Luke as the last Jedi, with the possibility of Leia filling in the gap for the second Jedi. But apparently she doesn't, because Luke goes off and tries to start his own Jedi Academy. Ooh, and another name drop from a Star Wars book series I haven't read. Seriously, I just saw it a few days ago at my local library. Libraries, kids, they're like the internet, except you're expected to wear pants. Use them, learn them, love them, they are your friend. So we jump forward a few years before the beginning of Episode 7, and Luke tries to create more Jedi because the Jedi are still a thing, and the Sith are, well, not. The Force has to bring itself into balance again, so this brings up Snoke and the First Order. Is that a band? And honestly, we don't know a whole lot about Snoke yet, and that's a theory for another time. But clearly he has the whole Dark Lord of the Sith vibe thing going on. Is he Darth Plagueis, whom Sidious talked about in Episode 3, staying with the movies? Or is he somebody we've met before? Who knows? But we do know that Snoke converts Luke's greatest student, Ben Skywalker, over to being one of the Knights of Ren, who immediately comes back and wipes out all the little bitty Jedi that Luke was trying to foster. And so the Jedi are now back down to 1. But because Luke escaped and there are 2 Sith Lords at play, the Force brings up Rey to be his pupil, bringing the number of Jedi once again to 2. 2 Jedi, 2 Sith, the universe is in balance, and the Force is happy. That's why I believe in Episode 8, Luke will decide that the Jedi must end. If he dies without passing on the knowledge of how to become a Jedi, the Jedi will cease to exist and no more can be created. And this will cause the Force to balance itself by wiping out the Sith. The only way to win is not to play. But hey, that's just a theory. An intellectual property of MatPat theory. Oh, wait. Let me try that again. That's my idea, and I hope it induced nerd rage. Okay, so yes, we know that the Jedi are not really going to end in the movie called The Last Jedi, and somehow it's going to continue. Rey's going to be really dedicated, and she's going to try and learn the ways of the Force from books or something like that, and Luke's going to finally give in and say, yes, okay, I want to teach you how to do it. We all know it's going to happen. It's just the premise of the movie. But Wesley, I hear you saying, what about General Grievous? What about Sarut in Rogue One? Well, near as I can figure, just because you're a Force user or Force sensitive, that doesn't necessarily make you a Jedi or a Sith. From what I can tell, many people could be open to using the Force, but as long as they are not well trained in the Force by a Jedi Master or a Sith Lord, the forces of good and evil remained locked at 2. So what do you think? Leave a message in the comments below. Tell me why I'm full of it or why you think I'm right. Is there any piece of the evidence in the movies that I forgot? And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook, and in addition to more anger and theories coming down the pipe, we also have the pièce de résistance of Club 40 Audio, the audio dramas. Listen to them on YouTube, SoundCloud, or you could even support us by buying them on Bandcamp or Patreon. This is Wesley Critchfield signing off, and until next time,
Feed me your rage.